Anytime you have a quadratic equation or a quadratic function, you can graph it. But what's the problem with graphing? It takes a lot of time. It's a lot of work. The graph's not always big enough. Sometimes you get decimals, right? There are all kinds of flaws with graphing. Your graph's too small, you get a decimal, it's too much work. So, some, not all, but some problems, it's easier to factor. Now, I'm not saying this works every time. There are some problems that factoring doesn't happen. You can't do it. I mean, you could, but you don't want to. So this is an easier way. Instead of graphing and finding the x-intercepts, the zeros, to find your solution, we're going to factor it. So the vocabulary term today is the zero product property. And I'm fairly positive, without even knowing the mathematical definition, you could probably deduct what that means. Zero product property. You know what zero is? What does product mean? Multiply, right? Answer to a multiplication problem. So what do you think happens when you multiply by zero? Yeah. It's when the product, multiplication, of two or more quantities equals zero. It's when the product of two or more quantities equals zero. All right. So here's what it's going to look like today. X minus 3, that's one quantity. Times x plus 7, that's another quantity. So I'm multiplying the product of two or more quantities equals 0. This equation up here has an equal sign, so it's an equation, shows us the zero product property. Two quantities that are multiplied together that have a product answer of 0. So how are we going to use this idea for our assignment? Step 1. Set the problem equal to 0. Which, in fact, we did a little bit yesterday when we were graphing, right? Some of our problems, we needed to move a quantity to the other side to make it equal to 0. So we're going to set a quantity, or set our problem equal to 0. Lots of times, step number 1 is already done. We don't have to do anything for step number 1. Other times, we're going to have to move something to make it equal 0. Step 2 is to factor the equation. All right. So this factor of the equation, we have to go back to polynomials to think about. Remember, we look for factors of C that have a sum of B. Factors of C that have a sum of B. Or if A does not equal 1. So if A is any number other than 1, factor out a GCF first. And we'll do examples of this. Or Xbox. And step number 3 is split the problem into 2 equations and solve. Then this extra piece of paper is going to give us some more room to really draw out our examples. Our examples should fit in this space, but some of you are going to have larger handwriting than others, and you may need to write some clues in there. So fold it in half, flip-flop, we'll label it examples on the top. Fold in half so that it opens. What is this, a hamburger fold?
Yeah.
Fold it in half like a hamburger, glue the bottom bun down. Erasing the PBIS supplies. See, now you want to open this flipped book and decide, learn about examples. I thought you glued it together.
Can you write for me?
Can I write for you?
It's not doing writing capital letters.
Oh my gosh. Growth mindset, Paula. You just can't yet. Okay, ready? All right, let's start off easy. If your problem is already factored, like that example we had at the beginning of our notes, if your problem is already factored, we can skip step 1. Set the problem equal to 0 because it's already equal to 0, right? Yeah, it says equal 0. Step 2, it says factor the equation. Well, it's already factored, so I can even skip step 2. Step 3, split the problem into 2 equations and solve. So I skipped 1 and 2 and I'm automatically on 3. So I'm going to split it in 2 problems. X minus 3 equals 0 and x plus 7 equals 0. I split it into 2 problems. X minus 3 equals 0 and x plus 7 equals 0. I take my 2 factors and I split them apart. Split it into 2 problems and solve. Hopefully you don't need to show this part of adding 3 to both sides, it canceling out, x equals 3. But if you do, that's okay. X plus 7 equals 0, so the opposite of plus 7 is minus 7. And there are our answers. How many solutions are in this quadratic equation? 2. 3 and negative 7. So if you graphed this problem, your intercepts would be at 3 and negative 7. But this is a lot faster than graphing this problem. Sam. So we'll get there. The factors are these. Let's just practice with these examples and then we'll get to that one. Okay? So let's try this one. So this is already factored. My first factor is x. My second factor is x minus 5 equals 0. Set the problem equal to 0. Done. Factor the equation. Done. Split the problem into 2 equations and solve. So what's my first equation? X equals 0. What's my second equation? X minus 5 equals 0. This is awesome. Done. How many solutions are in this equation? 2. 0 and 5. If you would have graphed this problem, your intercepts would have fallen at 0 and 5. Angelina. Not when it's factored. You can find the axis of symmetry from your zeros, yeah, because you add them together and divide by 2. All right, so a little bit more difficult. Is step number 1 done? Yeah, it equals 0. Check. Step number 2, factor the equation. Is it factored? No. So we have to factors of C that have a sum of B. What's the C value? 10. What's the B value? 7. So factors of 10 that have a sum of 7. 5 and 2. 5 plus 2 is 7. So x plus 5 and x plus 2. equals 0. Now it's factored. Split it in 2. X equals -5. X equals -2. Example 4, x squared plus 2x equals 8. Step 1, is it ready? No, Corbin, what are you going to do? Subtract 8 from both sides. Someone tell me what the left side now says. Angelina? Perfect. What does the right side now read, Tommy? 0, because 8 minus 8 is 0. So now, have we completed step 1? All right. So now we're ready for step 2, which is factor of C that have a sum of B. So we look at 8. How do I use 2 and 4, or remember 1 and 8? They're hidden. How do I do that to get positive 2? How do I do that, Jesse? -2 and positive 4. Because -2 times positive 4 is -8, but -2 plus 4 is positive 2. Could you flip-flop these in your notebook? Could you put positive 4 first and -2 second? Yeah, it doesn't matter. 4 minus 2 would work. Equals 0. Now I can move on to step 3, which is set the two problems. Some of you are doing this math, showing your work in your head, and that's fine. So my first solution is 2. And my second solution is -4.